And we're live. Amy Vaughan, welcome to Powerhouse Women.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, you and I were connected, of course, through the amazing network of women that we both have access to and know. Let's talk first about what your current role is and who you serve.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the owner and chief empowerment officer, as you can see below, for an organization called Together Digital. It is a member-based organization, a network of women who work in digital marketing, advertising, and tech. And I serve them. And they are an amazing, powerful, collaborative, and diverse group of women who work in digital marketing and advertising. I run all of the day-to-day operations, work on the programming, help to gain new memberships, and really just build the kind of culture and support that I would have loved to have seen for somebody like myself coming up through the agency world for many, many years as a woman and eventually a mom. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you have members from all over.
Mhm.
And, it's interesting because I have seen other women I know post about your events, and I didn't put it together until you and I connected that it was the same organization, and they have wonderful things to say about Together Digital. How did you get involved in Together
Yeah.
Digital?
So, as many folks who are involved maybe know already, I'm not the founder. I was actually a member first. So, I joined as a member back in late 2016. So, the group got started by a woman named Elena Scherer in Columbus, Ohio, former agency owner, blogger. Decided that after a series of sexual harassment and sexual discrimination experiences, that she wanted to create a safe space for women in our industries to collaborate, work together, build trust, build reputation, and gain power. And, I, at the time, was a very burnt out creative director working 60, 70 hours a week, had one 3-year-old and then another kiddo on the way. And I was a creative director. I had my title, I had my salary that I thought I always wanted. And I just realized I was lacking fulfillment. I didn't feel connected at work. I felt like I just kind of showed up and did my job and went home. I wasn't always present at home either. So I really wasn't doing much to fill my own cup. And so when I heard about Elena's story and when I met some of the women at the Together Digital early 2016 conference, I drove up at like 6 in the morning actually to go to this event in Columbus. And I walked in and it's a room full of women. And there was one table off to the side and it was 3% men. And that was to represent the number of women in the C-suite of Fortune 500 companies. And so seeing like yourself in a room like that makes you sort of realize what you're up against, because I'd had a separate experience. I had a ton of amazing male allies and champions throughout my career as a copywriter to creative director. I was lacking strong female relationships and bonds since childhood. I was much more a tomboy than I was hanging with the gals. We were pretty awful to each other through high school. And so I just really avoided that, but I didn't realize what I was missing. So when I joined, I became an ambassador and city champion for the Cincinnati chapter to help get that group started. And I said yes when I had no reason to say yes other than for me. And it obviously has paid off because after 3 years of helping run the Cincinnati board, I was asked to run the day-to-day business while Elena went and ran for Congress, which was another urging that a member had encouraged her to do. And then after a year, became partner. After another year, I actually bought the business. And so, there's just this amazing opportunity that rests within the ability to not just recognize your own potential, but put yourself in a place where others will recognize yours. So I know my story is just one of many within the organization, but that's how I got involved and ended up owning the business, which again, if you had told me 6 years ago when I walked into that first room and saw that impact of those women coming together and being vulnerable, that I would someday run it, I would have said you were crazy. I wouldn't believe it for a second.
It's interesting as you're talking, Amy, I was thinking that there is something really special. I know that many of us see this as we get into the working environment, especially once you have kids, that the power of your female relationships, they just take on a different role.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because maybe that is why there is so much conversation about
Mhm.
competitiveness with women is from our more formative years, like the high school years, let's
Mhm.
say. And then we have this perception that that's what it is. But
Right.
it's unbelievable, I think, as we get older and start to work and start to realize that the workplace is still not the easiest, most equitable place for women. I mean, obviously, there are so many groups that are now working on equity.
Yep.
And if you think about what you said about that one meeting that you walked into, and there were three men sitting at a table,
Mhm.
and that represented the number of women on boards at
Mhm.
Fortune 500 companies, that to me is such a great distillation of why organizations like Together Digital are needed.
100% agree. And it's true too. I feel like we see a lot of women joining us at that kind of critical point where
Mhm,
they are becoming working moms or they're caretakers
mhm,
or they're wanting to
mhm.
do a career pivot. Because you're right, there is something to one getting older and having that wisdom behind you, that you can kind of shed that societal conditioning that women need to work against each other versus together.
Yeah,
And so I think that was maybe the most amazing and beautiful gift, because now I have a tremendous, not just circle of people, but friends, like true friends that I can turn to at any moment.
yeah.
I didn't have that 6 years ago. I felt so lonely and isolated
Mhm,
in my job
mhm.
and where I was going. I was getting to the top, but I was the only one there and I didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, you began your career in copywriting, and you became a creative director
Mhm.
first.
Yeah.
I just wanna understand what drew you to the like, what drew you to this work?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been creative since I was a kid, but it's one of those things where it doesn't, it doesn't have the potential for a great paycheck. And I grew up, my family was relatively poor. And so I just really wanted to make my parents proud and to make money. So when I left college, my first year of college was actually pre med. I thought,
Mhm.
what will make mom and dad more proud? And what could possibly not make me more money? Well, never mind malpractice, insurance and whatnot. It's not what it used to be, lucratively speaking. But after my first year and working in hospitals and nursing homes and diagnostic centers, I learned that it wasn't the path for me. And so rather than force myself through 4 years of college or in med school that I was going to have to pay for myself, I decided
Mhm.
to take a year off. And I just
Mm.
started working at a pharmaceutical research company in Chicago and kind of deciding what it was that I wanted to do next, and
Mm.
happened to fall in with the director of marketing there at the pharmaceutical company. And she was like, "You're so creative and talented with all the stuff that you do." I was like, at the front desk, by the way, at the front desk of the office working it. She's like, "You could help me with some of this marketing stuff." And I was like, "Oh, wait, wait, wait. I can be creative and make money. I can solve problems and be creative. Okay." And so through the course of like doing some just kind of like it was like tidbits of work here and there for her and finding I really enjoyed it. I don't even think it was 3 months after that initial conversation that I applied to go back to school. And so I worked full time at a graphic design firm, running their office for the 3 years that I went back to college at night to get my
Oh my
degree in advertising
god.
and design. So, and it's a love-hate relationship. I think marketing and branding has such power to create such
Mhm.
influence. And I
Mhm.
think that's what drew me to it. And again, being
Mhm.
creative and solving problems and seeing results from what you do.
Yeah.
Um, I'm super psyched about it. But then obviously there's a lot multiple sides to any
Mhm.
industry. Uh,
Mhm.
so that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, there, no question. I mean, and of course, we all just saw the display of the power of advertising over the course of the weekend on Sunday evening in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's kind of, yeah, there are those of us who watch the Super Bowl for the concert and the commercials,
Yeah, Nana,
and and
absolutely.
I'm one of those people. But I'm actually curious, just since it's such a timely topic, was there a favorite commercial you had as a creative? I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, no, not really. Here's my thing about Super Bowl ads. I think that they just get so much time, attention, and energy put towards them, and then the money, and
Mm,
then the outcome. So
yeah.
none of them, and I sound like such a crotchety old woman right now. I'm like, none of them really, really struck me
Mm,
in particular. I do think, honestly, Okay, I'm gonna go like a little. I'm gonna try to answer the question better than that. I honestly think Rihanna and the way that she owned halftime was the best out of all
Yeah.
because she leveraged her brand, her personality, her
Yeah.
platform,
Mm.
and her artistry to just like she just it's just brilliant, you know. I mean,
Mhm.
her music and her artistry is what got her started. You know, her brand and, you know, her cosmetics are what she has been wanting to launch all along, and her being able to leverage and manage all of that
Mm.
and then get up on per stage and perform, announce a pregnancy.
Mm.
Sorry, advertisers.
Yeah.
She won. And because here's the thing, it was authentic. It was
Yeah.
genuine. It was on brand to her. It wasn't trying to, I don't know, it was just leveraging the platform in a way that I felt was authentic.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I do think she is brilliant. I mean, she has such a the fact that she did not have, if you compare her halftime show to
Mhm.
shows of other years, there was maybe less going on in terms of what you were visually looking at,
Right.
but you couldn't take your eyes
Right.
off of her. And
Mhm.
when you are that talented,
Yeah.
that you have that much charisma,
Mhm.
there is that you don't need the rest of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean, yes, she still had a very cool thing going on with, be of course, I was worried for her suspended in the air,
Right.
sure that they tested all of that, but
Right.
it's unbelievable, I think, to your point, when you have you've got the built-in talent, when you've got that authenticity and really something that you can share, you don't need the glitter, so to
Yeah.
speak,
Exactly.
around it.
Yeah.
So I love that. All right, well, I want to move to your perspective on how the advertising industry has
Yeah.
changed since you began your career.
Yeah. So when I was getting started, one of my first internships was through a company called Euro RSEG, which I believe has now since changed names. I think every agency I ever worked for did.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it was working on Sprint and it was working through direct mail. And what I loved about it right away was that I got to know coupon redemption rates for what we sent in the mail. And I just
Mhm.
remember being really nerded out by that. So as soon as, you know, I had the opportunity to start working on more digital things like banner ads, which were, I'm aging myself right now, relatively new, I jumped on it because I really found it fascinating to see that return on the investment and not just like the money that the client spent, but on my
Mhm.
idea and on the
Mhm.
way that it was executed. Um, so yeah. Did I answer your question? I started
I
ranting.
mean, yeah, well, and it's so interesting that you talked about direct mail because when I
Publication.
started my career at American
Yep.
Express, a lot of the way we communicated, yes, there was above the line, there was all
Yes.
the television, the radio, the out of home, that kind
Mhm.
of stuff existed. Of course, I mean, we did a lot of that, but direct marketing was a big part of how we
Yeah.
acquired customers,
Yep.
right? It was us really worrying about these direct mail pieces. If you think about though now, and even when I left American Express back in 2007,
Mhm.
and back then direct mail response rates were 40 basis points. So that's like
Yeah.
less than a half a percent,
Yeah.
right? And
Very low
when you
yield.
got 40 basis points
Mhm.
versus let's say 30 basis points, you were like, "Ooh, what did I do right?"
Yeah.
But nobody was no, it's an interesting thing about how all of these channels kind of evolve over
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And when you started, if you talked about starting in digital ads, doing banner ads,
Yep.
when you started digital ads, the response rates, the click-through rates were
Yep.
significantly higher.
Oh yeah.
But that's like anything else. Like over
All
time, the
the time.
channel, people
Mhm.
get, just like more inundated,
Mhm.
right? Like anything else, and
Yep.
response rates drop.
A little more
So
into
it's
it.
really interesting now, like as the industry is evolving,
So much.
well, it's still digital,
It
right?
is, it is, and I think the thing I've loved about it in the way to answer your question more directly, the way that it's changed is that, you know, it's more than tactics. It's a convoluence of understanding human behavior, data. There's so many more inputs now to what we do as marketers than there were when I started, almost 20
Mhm.
years ago.
Mhm.
Um, the fact that the industry, like social media, I remember I got to work on Pringles as a brand on Facebook, and we had 7 million followers. We wanted to get it up to 20 million followers, and we did in a year's time through content, but it wasn't pay to play yet. The API was completely different. And so
Mhm.
what I have definitely seen, obviously, is that, that change of one, our attention, the attention economy has shrunk significantly. So we're competing with that. We're competing with big
Mhm.
data. And then we're competing with, human rights issues and things in which brands, may or may not be deciding to sort of make a statement on or make a play for, either for the right or the wrong reasons. And so to me, I think, it's definitely become a lot more complicated than it was when I started. Everything used
Yeah.
to feel so black and white about it. And now I think there's so much more interesting information to discuss. And I kind of see this pendulum swinging between this drive for, growth at all costs sort of mentality from companies and agencies to,
Mhm.
or just like, how do we actually be profitable and smart? Like it used to
Yeah.
be great that we could get all this data and numbers, but what does it actually mean? And how
Right.
do we actually leverage it? And
Yeah.
what are we paying for it? And so I think marketers and advertisers, we're just getting a lot smarter, and we're starting to kind of, instead of having those big pendulum swings, we're kind of being more even keeled about how we approach our marketing and our messaging, being more intentional, being more inclusive.
Yeah.
So I'm an internal optimist. I would like to think that despite all of that cluster that I just described, that it's going towards working towards the better. But it is a fast moving industry. So yeah, it can be a lot to keep up with.
So you talk with women
Mhm.
often. I mean, your organization, though those are the women, those are the people in your
Mhm.
organization. You have women that you engage with.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what you think needs to change for women
Yeah.
in particular?
Well, there's so many false narratives we're given as women from the time that we are children. So much of the so that I like to tell people the story about my daughter who told me she couldn't be an astronaut at 4 years old because she wasn't a boy. Because she'd only ever seen astronauts that were men. I'm like, we are buying different books. We were going to watch all the women that are doing spacewalks. The things that need to change, while there's so much that needs to be changed outside of us, we have to think about what is our locus of control? What can I control? All I can
Mhm.
control are the narratives I'm telling myself. I can
Mm.
only control the ways in which I am presenting myself to the rest of the world and the way that I show up.
Right.
And, I think for me that the most common advice that I give to women is really about trusting your inner knowing, and your own gut, leading as you are as a person versus trying to lead like someone else or a man, because that's the kind of leadership that's been modeled before us for eons.
Mhm.
Today, I was actually reading a post on Slack and I had a mini rant about the fact that the title, once I read the article, it made more sense, but the title was like, Women being humble and self critical is costing them.
Mm.
And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, I can see that when it comes to self review time. But you know
Mhm.
what? Being self-critical and, like, humble to me is being self-aware. That's, like, what
Mm.
makes us human, that's what makes us real and
Mhm.
authentic, all these things we kind of buzzwords that we talk about, and to me, it's not about asking women to change who they are, it's more about getting the rest of the world and leadership to model that similar behavior. We need more leaders that are humble and self-critical, and we shouldn't
Mhm.
be penalized, and that's kind of what the article was more
Mhm.
about, how leaders can actually look deeper and look at how women are maybe viewing themselves and what lens we're putting on ourselves so that we are not
Mhm.
holding ourselves back and they can help champion us.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the work that we have to do as women, while it really helps to reach out and collaborate and connect with others, there's so much that kind of starts within that's really
Yeah.
deeper, meaningful work and knowing who you are, trusting who you are, and then finding a safe space to express that. And that's
Yeah.
really where I feel like Together Digital, and the community we have built allows women to do that in a
Yes.
safe space because it's scary.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's so much in me that I want to try to, if we can, delve deeper a little bit on the self-awareness piece because I am with you
Mhm,
about this self-awareness thing.
mhm,
And the I wish earlier in my career
mhm,
I had learned how to develop that better. I think as women, we're intuitive. I think a lot of women, at least a lot of the women, we also have we have a large community of women, the influencers and the creators we work with. And one of the things that I observe, or we've observed about women, is that we do go with our guts
Yeah.
so often. We have intuition. We think, okay, this is the right thing for me to do.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes, though, when you are intuitive, as women are,
Mhm.
the downside of that is that you may not be as consciously aware of
Mhm.
why you're making the decisions you're making. And
Absolutely.
so then we to pull a very male phrase, or at least a sports related
Uh-huh.
phrase, we play Monday morning quarterback all the
Yep.
time. We're like, why
Always.
did I make that decision? Why did I do that? I don't know why I did that. Whereas if we had taken, we maybe do know, we just weren't aware of it. We weren't conscious of it.
Mhm.
And the value of being self-aware
Mhm.
has been a game changer for me,
Yeah.
because I am somebody who's intuitive. I make gut decisions,
Mhm.
and I don't want to look back and think, why did I do that? It's better if you just take the time to be conscious of it. I'm
Mhm.
curious if you can share,
Yeah.
do you have a practice or a way that you work through that self-awareness?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of ways. I'm kind of a nerd, and most of us in Together Digital are really always geeking out over not just professional development, but personal development. And to me, that's cultivating self awareness, right? Personal development. So that's taking time. And this, again, it's not for everybody. It's really what works for you. It can be reflective journaling, it could
Mhm,
be meditation. I honestly find I get a lot through reading literature that, speaks to me wherever I'm at the time.
mm,
I think asking yourself questions, staying curious about yourself always. I don't think we think about it often enough. I think we're often wondering and thinking what question to ask somebody else and never what to ask ourselves. And so, like
mm,
you said, oftentimes, say you have a moment, you have a meeting, and you get out of that meeting and you just feel like that didn't quite go the way that I had hoped, or the way that I wanted, or I didn't show up in the way or in the light that I had hoped. The best thing you can do in that situation is not blame the other person, not project, but to sit back and say, what could I have done differently to have made this a better outcome? Why
mm,
did I show up this way? What's
mhm,
impacting me about, like, what's changing the way I'm showing up? And
mhm,
oftentimes, I'm not saying to blame it all on yourself, but again, what can you control? That was definitely one thing. I remember I was in the car with my husband and we were going to dinner, and I was just swirling and venting about everyone and everything at work. And, I care so much. I always care a lot about where I'm working and what I'm doing, no matter what it is. I'm very dedicated, very loyal. And he said to me, and I didn't smack him even though I wanted to, was, you cannot worry about what you can't control, which
mm,
was really hard for somebody like me at the time, especially to hear. And so, like, for this year, I have, everybody likes, like, their word of the year. Mine is allow.
mm,
Whenever I start to feel a moment of resistance within myself, whether it's a certain feeling or a certain type of uncomfortability, I'm like,
mhm,
you know what? I just need to allow it. And if I can allow it and listen to
mhm.
what's happening, I'll have a better understanding.
Yeah.
One more great tool I'll throw in there is, for me, that really helped was Enneagram. It is
Mm,
not a personality type testing, but it allows you to understand, based on, like, from your childhood, what motivates you, so that
mm,
you understand how and why you show up certain ways. So for me, I'm an Enneagram type 9, which are called, like, the peacemakers, or the mediators. And so I really like to avoid conflict at all costs. I don't love, like, gratuitous violence. I like peace and serenity. I like everyone to get along, but I realize that's not always it. But I also realize, because of that, it could make me seem as, like, a doormat or passive,
mhm,
when in
mhm,
fact I'm not. And so it's really making sure that I understand what are my motivations, so that I can understand how I'm going to show up, so that
mhm,
when it is off, I know what to fine tune and what to change. And me
mm,
understanding my nine-ness really helped me address some very significant, like, work type conflicts and issues. So I
Mhm.
do highly recommend it. While it seems like it's a fun personality type thing, it's deeper work than that. There's no one tried and true quiz. It's a little bit of research and time spent on yourself and understanding who you are. Once
Mhm.
you know it though, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you see all of these things, all these blind spots. I think that's what I love about it. It shows you your blind spots.
Yeah. I love that. And, I think the other thing that we also have to recognize is that we evolve. And
Mhm,
something that was good for us and and served us
mhm.
before may not serve us 5 years later.
Oh,
It
100%.
is we evolve as human beings, and that's why I am such a big believer
Mhm,
in doing the work to get to that self-awareness,
mhm.
because it is a journey. It
Mhm.
doesn't end. Like,
No.
we always need to do it.
Yeah.
It's not like, "Oh, I did that. I did that last year." No,
Mhm.
it's an ongoing thing,
Right.
but it can be a game changer.
It can.
So,
Yeah.
all right,
Absolutely.
well, Amy, my last question.
Great.
What do you wish you could tell the young Amy that was just starting out in her career?
That's a great question. Um, I don't exactly know because it's one of those questions when I saw it in the list, it's one of those things like I love books that have these kind of clever plots about them. And it's like, okay, yeah, I could go back and I could tell myself something, but would it change who I am and what I'm doing now? I don't
Mm,
think I'd want to risk that. I don't want to,
mm,
I think I would just show up and be like, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to be
mhm.
fine. Just trust what you're doing. Do it. Like I said that the other day on talking to somebody. I was like, the secret to confidence is not being confident and doing it anyways. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to change anything about the difficulties, even the hardships and the successes that I've had, because I wouldn't be who I am right now, raising the kids that I'm raising and doing the work that I'm doing. Um, if I'd have tipped my hand away at too much, which is I guess is why I think, that self-awareness and trusting your intuition and knowing and understanding and trusting yourself really is some of the best advice I could give. And then the second part would be, finding that safe space, that community or whatever that looks like for you, in which you
Mhm,
can truly be that person. And it doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to be the
mm,
office. You can do this
mhm.
outside of work.
Yeah.
Is gonna be the thing that gives you opportunity, um,
Mm,
to do things like what I'm getting to do now, which again, I never thought I'd end up getting to do. But that took me stepping outside of my comfort zone, trusting my gut, putting myself out there, and then having others recognize my abilities and giving me opportunity. So, yeah.
I love that. It reminds me of a woman I had on the show who said that she said, as women, we tend to beat ourselves up.
Mhm.
I wish that I could go back and give my younger self a hug and just
Aw,
say,
yeah.
"Thank you."
Uh-huh.
And
Right.
it reminds me a lot of what you just said.
Love
Like,
that.
I wanna just go through the experience. Like,
Yeah.
that is how it should work.
Mhm.
And we do the things we do, and it got us to where we are now.
Absolutely. 100%
The
agree.
journey. Well, Amy Vaughn, thank you so much. I am like literally, I've written so many notes, and I've had a lot of aha moments as we've chatted today in just this very short time. So thank you. I really
Of
appreciate you
course.
spending your time with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. I hope it was helpful.
It absolutely was.